is up, guys? Okay, so now that my Evo is starting to look pretty rad, now I'm gonna dig into some of the more boring things, which is the electrical problems that this car currently has. So I am starting with the radio and the cluster. I've actually never had radio working in this car since I got it, and my entire cluster does not work. If you know your Evos, you'll realize that this is actually an Evo 6 cluster. Because my Evo 5 has a Evo 6 interior swap. And that was one of the reasons that I completely fell in love with this car. I love this like purple lilac Evo 6 interior. It's in really good condition. And along with the interior, I got the Evo 6 cluster, which I also think is really rad. However, it has not been working really since I got the car. It'll work sometimes and it'll be on and I'll see my speed and RPM, and other times it just doesn't work. And by other times, I mean pretty much all the time now. I need to look in the back there, see if maybe a clip is loose or what is going on. And then my radio has also not been working. I've actually already started digging into this, and those are a couple of the problems I'm going to be addressing today. Oh, and I also need to look into my fuel pump power issue that I've been having. At high RPM, I'm actually losing fuel pressure. Although I've been driving this car, I've been driving it like a granny because I just need to stay low RPM because I'm just worried about leaning the car out. Freddie, when he did do a touch-up tune on it, he compensated for that with the injectors, but that is still on my electrical to-do list. So I'm gonna try and get into that as well. All right, radio is out. And now we're gonna test to see if this radio is getting any power. And if it is, maybe just the unit is bad. And if it's not getting power, then we can fix that. Since I have to test power for the radio anyway, I'm gonna get this cluster pulled out so I can test this as well. JDM King, Tommy F yeah, is the one that did this Evo 6 swap because he wanted the Evo 5 interior for his Evo, and gonna have to call him out on something. Tommy, where's my screw? Where's my rare JDM cluster screw? That should be right there. Where is it? Where is it, Tommy? I knew I got ripped off. Alright, so taking the cluster in and out a couple times, we were thinking that maybe those two clips in the back that you have to press the cluster into just weren't fully clipped in, and that's why it would go in and out, even though, like I said, mostly now it's just out all the time. But even making sure that the clips are fully in from the back, nothing. Still got nothing, so I think the cluster is bad. I think the cluster is bad. It didn't seem like any of the wires like depinned themselves or were like loose at all. That sucks. The only way to really figure out if it's the car and it's plug or wiring, or if it's this swapped in cluster, is for me to throw in another cluster. So luckily, I think I know a guy.
Yep. I don't even need to do it. You saw that, right?
Yes. Wow.
Okay.
Trash. Mine is trash.
Hop on Yahoo Auctions Japan. So this is like the lazy way of testing stuff, just because you can kind of use it as a voltmeter and see if something has voltage. But then if you're sure that you have the right power wire and it doesn't have voltage, you can send power to it. So kind of kills two birds with one stone. So if we can check and see if it has power or make sure we have the right wires, we can also check ground too, just by poking things. Look, that's a ground.
Cool. Are you a ground?
No.
Beep.
Here, clip this to your necklace, and then I'll send power on this one.
What? No! Whoa. Watch that Tomei shifter, bro. Actually, I keep scratching this. I feel like I should just take it off. It's really annoying and in the way.
All right, so the two wires that we're concerned with, you have your battery, which needs to have power, and then we have another one that's going to be the signal to turn this on. So, first off, all right, so it does have voltage. Now we need to find what triggers this.
And I think that's trash, and the cluster is trash.
I love the confidence.
I'm trying to hold on to some, but just being realistic.
Okay, so you have power, like both normal, and then you have ACC, which should trigger this to turn on. So don't do anything yet, leave it on. We confirm that this thing is not powering on. There's no power button that you just didn't see or anything?
No, it's definitely like this.
Okay, so now what's left to check? If we have power, we have ACC.
Ground.
Bingo. You have ground. So it's just a bad head unit.
I told you, trash. Trash.
Yeah, but you want to
Trash.
check it.
Trash. Alright, it's the next day. I wanted to pick up a new single DIN radio so I can throw that into the car while I'm dealing with it now. I picked that up for the cluster issue. Can't be fixed. My cluster is bad, unfortunately. So I'm hitting up Tommy to see if he has any clusters that he could sell me. I really want an Evo 6 cluster though. I know mine's a 5, but the Evo 6 cluster matches the rest of the interior swap that's done already in the car. So it might be a while actually until I get a working cluster. Now I gotta learn how to be one with the car and just feel the RPM. You know what I'm saying? Also, am I the only person that cannot properly dress myself in the morning if it's freezing? If it's freezing when I get out of bed, my brain like gets short-circuited and I just can't properly put normal clothes on. For example, rocking the plaid again, right? Like, that's fine. We looked at the rest of my outfit. I was so cold. I have sweatpants on over leggings and then slides. But you know, I'm not gonna hate on the slides. Slides are never a bad decision. But yeah, I don't know what I'm dressed for today. But yeah, that's what happens when it's too cold and I wake up in the morning. So yeah. I don't like getting up to get tools or supplies once I start something, so I just threw like everything that I might possibly need into the car. This is the radio unit I ended up getting. This was like the cheapest one, and it has Bluetooth, which is really all I'm ever going to be using. So this is it. The current radio that's in the car that doesn't work anymore does have everything labeled on the other side. So all the wires are labeled. So I'm hoping this isn't that complicated of a process. I'm probably just going to have to re-splice into the harness that's with the car already, depending on what this one has. I was hoping this one had labels on the wires too, but it doesn't. Should have a diagram or something though. Haha. Sweet. We have our radio harness. We have our diagram that tells us what each color is. And then on the radio that's in the car right now, I don't have to take it back out, so I put everything in before I left. But everything's labeled, so this should hopefully not actually take too long, and I'm gonna have music and be able to jam in the Evo for the very first time. This car on the highway is pretty loud, especially because of the gearing. Like when you're just cruising 70 miles per hour, it's like Rrr! So at least now I can drown that out with music. Look how beautifully labeled everything is on this one. This is the stock side of the radio harness, and In theory, this would be really easy if I had connectors that were like this, so I could just, boom, directly plug into that and only have to like crimp on one side for a connector. I do not have these, so I'm just going to use these guys. I'm excited to try these out. You can see all the solder melt and fuse them together. Progress so far. I actually really like these things. I'm still kind of second guessing if the connection is good enough, but I think I'm just gonna continue to trust the process and hope it works at the end. But these are pretty cool, and I do think they look nicer than the other type of button connectors that you could use. Almost done. I have 4 more of the wires left, and then I'll be able to start testing stuff. Okay, and we're done. Everything is connected now to the factory plug, and then I have my ground wire that I'm just going to be adding right here. Alright, before I fully mount it back in here, let's test and make sure that it even works. Hey! Welcome. Y'all, this is the first time I'm hearing the speakers in here. The car speakers work. That was another thing that could have been messed up or not working. Okay, I'm really glad that the speakers work because I did not know if they worked or not since the stereo has never been working since I got the car. So good news, there's not more electrical issues there. And everything works now. Get all the interior pieces back in and be done with radio. And now I have music to jam out in this car, which is sick. And boom, just like that, your girl's got a working radio. But what are those? Look at that gap, you guys. Ugh, that is so cringy. That's gonna drive me crazy, but I know there's a lot of like universal trim pieces for these single den units that you can get to try and fill that up, but man, it's kind of an eyesore. But all around, I do like this head unit more than the previous one since it's blacked out and not all silver and gray like the other one. And it's very minimal too with the buttons it has on it. But that gap though, you guys. Oh, whatever. At least it works and the speakers work. Let's try it. Boom. And the bluish purple goes with my blue, purple, like, lilac interior. So that's pretty sick. I didn't plan that. I like it. I really didn't know what to expect, but the speakers are awesome. Now I'm gonna move on to fixing our fuel pump voltage drop issue at high RPM. So Adam did this to his car. He ended up having to put a relay for the fuel pump and have another wire coming straight from the battery so you don't lose any voltage to the pump. So I'm gonna have to do that, which means I gotta take the interior out, run some wires from the battery to the back and add in the relay. already had aftermarket wiring for the fuel pump. It had its own wire that was not connected to the main harness, so we traced it and it went up to a relay in the front, right underneath here. So it was this green wire. Now the relay here in the front is connected directly to the battery up front, which is what we wanted. When Adam tested everything, he realized that there's about a 1.5-ish voltage drop from the battery to that relay. So we ended up just redoing this power wire straight to the battery from the relay. And now, after testing that power wire in the back, there's only a voltage drop of 0.5 volt versus it being a 1.5 voltage drop. It was reading about 13.5 volts in the back, and the alternator, it reads at like 14. Versus when we started, when he tested it, it was reading at 12.5 in the back and 14 at the alternator. So that was quite a big voltage drop. So hopefully that was the problem. I am so relieved that that is done. I'd been putting it off for a while now, and because of that, not really being able to drive this car, I have been driving it to and from the warehouse, but never really stepping on it because at higher RPMs, the voltage would drop and the fuel pressure would drop. So now it is hopefully fixed. Freddie is actually gonna be here tomorrow, so he can really quick jump in here with me, go for a few pulls and see if that corrected our issue. It should. We are now getting 13.5 volts to the pump. Before we were only getting about 12.5, so that is actually a big improvement. Luckily, this car already had aftermarket wiring to the pump. We just don't know where somewhere in that wiring it was losing voltage from the relay to the battery at some point through there. So we just bypassed that and redid a power line from the battery to that relay. And now we are good. Yeah, hopefully tomorrow I can really start ripping on this thing. I got my new radio in here as well, which is sweet. And now I know that my cluster is just bad, which is unfortunate, but I'm gonna start trying to source an Evo 6 cluster as soon as I can. And yes, I want a 6, not a 5, to match the rest of the interior. The more I work on this car, the more I hang out with it, the more I feel like I'm really getting to know it. It's interesting because obviously the car was built before by someone that we don't know, so it's kind of a mystery. So when we find things like, oh, the fuel pump already had aftermarket wiring to it, I also found the 2 power wires that used to go to the former surge tank that was hooked up. So it was cool. It's like I'm discovering more and more about this car slowly but surely. I'm completely in love with this car, and we're not even to like the really cool stuff yet, you guys. Guess what? I have a new clutch for this car. Action Clutch sent me one, and now I'm just waiting for some other parts to come in to be able to do a clutch swap. And I'm gonna give in and just buy Adam's extra transmission that he has and get that transmission swap done as well while we're doing the clutch, since we will be there. It makes the most sense. If I properly want to rip on this thing and have fun, I need to fix my transmission, which means I really just need to swap the transmission. And Adam was wanting to get his built anyway, so he will take mine that has probably just some synchro issues in third gear. He'll take mine, he'll have it built for his race car Evo. We'll both be happy. New clutch, new trans coming up, and slowly but surely this thing is gonna be turned into a ripper. So I will see you guys in the next one.